So I am in a client's home. This is a house that I worked on back before the year 2000. And these were the people who were the first people to kind of trust me to give me real money to build actual real furniture. Up until that point, I had been a carpenter. I worked in cabinet shops. I worked in the film industry. Every type of carpentry there is. I've worked on boats. I've worked on trailers. There's all sorts of things I had already done. And these people came along and I got their house set up for them to live in. It's a longer story than that. I won't get all into it. But these were the first people to give me real money for something nice. And one of the first things I ever did was this coffee table. And this coffee table is at least, well, it's well over 20 years old now. That center board, boy, I think it was like a 25-inch wide board. It goes from about here to here. And then I banded the edge with this fatter piece here. And it's got a strong Japanese aesthetic to it, which is what they wanted at the time. The husband, Tim, he was going to Japan 5 times a year. So I got the butterfly mortises on the end to hold these corners together, which worked great. And then you see how thin this looks? It's got the illusion of floating off the top. It's actually a very thick base. It's just shaped. This is kind of a Japanese cloud lift here. And I duplicated that detail here on the mantelpiece. And then I mimicked that everywhere else on all the other furniture pieces that I designed, including this fireplace screen. Did it kind of small here. You have a lot of room to work. This is real mica. And that same detail is right here in the shape of these arms. All right, see this? As well as underneath the arm, as well as right here. And these pieces are a combination of mahogany and walnut. I even did the detail on the cutout there across the center. These are interesting pieces. Also here, you'll see there's an angle here, there's an angle here to make it level to the floor, which makes this top cap level to the floor. You pull these pins and the whole thing comes apart in pieces. I was working in an old garage, not a garage, I'm sorry, it was a basement shop at the time. So I had to design and build everything so it could be broken down, taken out of that basement, and thrown in my truck to be brought over here, or for anybody else I was doing work for at the time. This piece here is special. These are all one-of-a-kind pieces, of course. This is cherry. Right now, the house is in a disarray. This isn't normally here. I had to take some stuff out of an extra bedroom for them. They're having house guests next week. But that's leather. There's a crazy picture folders on this on the Mike Z Design Facebook page. Go to photos, go to albums, you'll see it. All kinds of compound curves going on here. I also select the wood for grain patterns. So you'll see in the center of this, there's that, kind of elliptical grain pattern. I chose that for center on there, and I'll do that. I'll match things up. The arms on this chair was a giant timber that I book matched. So I sliced it down the middle and split it open so the grain matches. This is the sort of thing you don't typically see people do. No mechanical fasteners in this piece. It's all joinery. So that's a mortise and tenon at the top here, and I pinned it with these pegs here, which are walnut. There's even a curve here. So this piece that supports the arm is thinner here, flares out at the top, rounds up here. If you ask me, it's beautiful. I put walnut feet on these, thinking, in the future that can always be adjusted. There's no adjustment on the back. The client didn't want that, so I designed it for him perfectly. So this is dovetailed into place, and it's just there to support this leather strap. Same thing here with the grain. I got these 2 points in the center facing each other. Book match parts down here. These are big timbers joined, so there's a seam here, and I use these dovetail keys to lock it together. A lot of work. And then matching ottoman. Again with the dovetails and walnut to pop, give you a little bit of contrast. The wood is darkened up so much it doesn't pop as much now as it did, but it really depends on your, there you go. Depends on your angle, right? How the light hits things. You can see that butterfly mortise there pop. I made the lamps. I made these trays at the bottom to put river stones in to help weigh them down. To mica shade, again, I mimicked the details here to match everything else in the room. It's on a dimmer, which I had to replace, so that's why there's this patch in the middle. But it's nice and easy. It clicks. Kind of nice. I did this one over here first. I will admit this one's a little bit more funky. It's got a point here on the front. It's basically just a 45. It's all solid wood, no plywood or veneer or anything like that. Big chunk of wood up here. So that was the first lamp. I'll show you the back side of that. Again with a dimmer switch, and I shaped this one to kind of match the shape of this front here. You just want to repeat your details. That's kind of nice. And then these little kind of look like through mortises, obviously. Those are just, they're probably like 1/4 of an inch thick or so. They're just there to kind of hide the fasteners that join that front edge. This piece here was special. I would do it a little bit differently if I did it again because they moved it around quite a bit. This was designed when people had more components. It's not, what's in here now is what was not in here originally. You can see all these wires poking out the back. I didn't put register mortises and keys on the legs to align everything. So, from time to time I come in here and realign them for them whenever they have somebody come in to change components or new TV, whatever. The top is one big solid piece. It's 3 parts joined with these proud end grain butterflies. It's not the best way to do these as far as strength goes, but this isn't going to come apart. It's all glued together. I purposefully did the visible groove. There was a hole here because originally this was built when there was a big square box TV up here. So as a plug, I had to come back later and put that in. And then you'd call that a Dutchman patch. I'm going to mention that out in the shop in a little bit here. And all this is 2 rails shaped with these feet. And there's a box there, and there's a box here, and then a drawer and a shelf that just floats. Nothing's attached. There are runners, hardwood runners on either side of this drawer that it slides on. And at the time I had a jig to do dovetails, which you don't really need these things, but they look good. I did not make that. I found it for them. I did make the frames, and there were sconces here. So I came up with a system to pad them off the walls, and I made a metal kind of box for the light bulbs, and now you have sconces that glow behind the artwork. I'm going to keep this just to my furniture. I'm not going to go over all the other things I did in this house because It was extensive. The story of this place is pretty amazing. Let me take you in the bedroom really quick and show you the bed that I did for them. You guys will get a kick out of this. All right, so this is an interesting system I came up with here for this bed. There's a rail along the wall, and everything hangs off of that rail, just like you build a house. It's very substantial. Even the end tables here, I guess you'd call them, are hung on the wall. So nothing's touching the floor on this end of the bed until you get down to here. And I've got this beam here that everything rests on. The floor is not level, so there's a block of wood on the one side there to hold it all up. I've got these giant half-blind dovetails here, which I cut by hand. And there's no glue here. This whole thing will come right apart. That's why I went so large with them. If you wanted to move this bed, you just slide this apart. It comes apart real easy. Again, selected the grain to do what it's doing. The headboard is special. It's all walnut with mahogany butterflies. Again, I angled this correct to be flat with the floor. I've got, let me show you that from the other side because the sun is getting into the lens. I've got splines in here. I can barely show it to you because there's weird lighting in here. And you can see this cool detail here. And this whole thing pivots forward. And then there's storage and a shelf back here, which they've never used. I'm very proud of this bed. A lot of details here on these end tables with the butterfly mortises and mahogany and the through tenons, which are really caps. Again, I actually did use screws here because it'll outlast a wood joint, so it is screwed through. And then I put the caps on to mimic through tenons there. No pulls on the drawers, it's unneeded. I created a little lip here, so you just grab this and boom. And here, no dovetails because they're not needed with modern mechanical hardware. Whenever you see the dovetails, it's nice to see it, but it's a waste of time, really. You don't need that. But again, it's all solid mahogany here, even the drawers. Oh, and I've got dovetail keys down here, like I like to do. So solid wood on the sides and the bottom. It's mitered. Oh, wow, look at that. I even put a spline at the miter. Zoom in here for you a little bit. It's been getting a little bit of abuse. This thing's been here for, I don't know, probably close to 20 years. And here's one of my benches. It's funny, I made these benches and I didn't have a place to put them, so we had one in their room here and they loved it so much that they ended up buying one from me because I took it back from them and they wanted it so bad. These benches are very special. I took, call it the Rocket Bench. It was really originally designed as a wedding gift for Ricky Rocket, if you could believe that. And then I never gave him one. I ended up giving the prototype to another friend of mine as a wedding gift. I made that one in ash. It didn't have all the details this one has. So this was not easy to make. And I made several of these. They got rented for photo shoots here in LA. They were in a high-end furniture shop for quite some time. Those took a lot of abuse. When I got them back, I had to refinish them. I sold them. They were about $4 grand a pop back in the day. The beauty of this is, look at that top, right, where you sit, the seat area. It kind of looks light, right? I mean, it looks like that top is lifted up off the legs. It's got this nice fine thin edge, but when you come underneath, you see this is a long chamfer here. And I even flared it up here on the ends and made this end very thin. So when you're standing at, again, when you're looking at this, you're normally standing up, right? So it gives the illusion that the piece is much lighter in weight than It actually is. This is a substantial piece of furniture. I mentioned this in a video the other day. If I make you a piece of furniture and there's an earthquake and you can't get out of your house, just lay down next to a piece of furniture I made, because the whole house could collapse on top of you and you will live. Again, here on in this case with these through tenons, they are mimicked. What's going on here is I have long lag bolts going down into these legs and capped off with this pretty thick, probably like a 1/2 inch thick piece of end grain. This shape of this seat should be obvious to you that, wow, that's got to be comfortable. Yes, it is. When you sit in this, it just cups your bottom. You don't need a cushion. It's amazing. You can see my butterfly mortises here on the side, making these curves. The reason I call it the rocket bench was because of the negative space in the legs here. It looks like the top of a rocket. I'm very proud of these benches. I was full of myself at the time. I was a bit of a snob. I only wanted to do furniture. I wasn't doing home improvement work or anything for years. I just did furniture. And I thought to myself, I want to design one iconic thing, like the Nelson bench. And benches are an iconic piece of furniture history, especially in the 20th century. So I thought to myself, well, I could do that. I can come up with something cool. Of course, nobody knows about me. Nobody knows about this bench. I still have my templates for this somewhere in the shop, so I can reproduce these, but they would be even more money now. It's just too time consuming to get all these curves. A little lesson in life, fellas, ladies, curves cost money in all aspects of life. Yeah, but I love these things. They're really phenomenal. I've got a lot of pictures of these. If you go onto my Mike Z Design Instagram and just do hashtag Mike Z Design, you'll eventually come across a bunch of images of these things. Anyhow, I'm going to take you guys out into the shop next and show you what I'm working on now, just how I'm milling this oak for the Butler's Pantry project. So hang on a second here. All right, so what I have here is some pieces of white oak. This is what they come like. Rough. Usually I got a bow to it or a cup. This is heavy stuff. Okay, this board here's got to weigh, this might only be 30 or 40 pounds. It's not that bad. It's just weird. When you're throwing this around all day, it adds up. So this piece has, as you can see, a void in it. Now, typically, if I was going to use this, I'll do what I showed you in the living room, a Dutchman patch there. And I can make it almost invisible, but I find that people like to see them because they think that that's a cool, it's a denotation of handmade items. You see the clamps on this board here, and that's because this board had a long split in it. I had to cut that split out, take a piece off the other end of the split, and glue it back. The center, this is going to be for a desktop shelf in this built in here. It's right there. My super high-tech drawings here. I actually did a map of everything so I could label all the parts with numbers and letters. So all the poplar now is marked, and I'm ready to start making panels and all that. But while I had the joiner planer out and everything, I figured I might as well surface this. So today, I'm going to quickly run these through, face join them one more time, and then I'm going to run them on the bandsaw to resaw them down a bit to make both these edges perfectly parallel to one another. This is the unmachined side. This is the machine side. This is just from face joining on the Inco joiner planer. Now the thing about it is a lot of you guys might have a planer that's 12 inches wide, and that's nice. Probably doesn't give as good of a finish as the Inca, but the Inca is limited with a 10 1/4, 10 1/8, 10 1/4. It's metric. And you can adjust it by how you set the Tersa head cutters. I'll do a video separate on that, changing those blades. I've been meaning to do it. Some people might find it interesting. This gives a superior finish, this machine, But again, I'm limited to 10 and a quarter on the planing. The irony there is that I've got a 10 and a quarter inch joiner, which is extremely rare and great because I could take a board this wide and totally flatten it. But, you know, it puts me in a weird position. So this desktop I'm doing is going to be this piece and this piece glued together, and I can't run them through the planer afterwards. So this board and this board have to be exactly perfect so that when I glue them together, the seam is perfect, tops and bottom edges are perfect, so I don't have to go through this stupid sanding thing that some people do. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is it's a passion of mine. I'm one of those weird people. I like to do things well, and I like thinking about the details. And people ask me all the time why I'm in California, why am I in Los Angeles? The reason is simple. This is where the people who can afford me live. You can't do what I do for nothing. It just takes a tremendous amount of time. And keep in mind, I'm getting old. Well, you're all getting older. I'm just getting better. And so my thing is, I feel like the camera's pointed down, so that's why I keep hunching. Let me tip this up a bit here. So my thing is that, you know, I try to work as much as I can in the shop. I get to stopping points throughout the day, but I have, as you know, if you're here on this channel, I've got the van, I've got the bike thing. Yesterday, my friend's adult son came over, and he has a direct drive bicycle, which I'm not super familiar with, but I figured it out, and I had to replace a sprocket for him and do all that, and that killed half my day. So that stuff happens. It makes my projects take longer than most. So the people who live here are affluent enough and usually mellow enough to just be like, here's the money. Let me know when you're going to come by and deliver it. It doesn't matter if it's a year from now. That's the sort of thing that a lot of people in other places, they can't do that. That freaks them out. Where's my money? How long is this taking? They're impatient, that sort of thing. Those are the types of people I tend to try to avoid. So I'm kind of an artist, right? I don't like throwing that around, but I am. And I've got a life as well. So I'm trying to cram as much of life into my life at this stage of my life, even though all I pretty much do is work and relax. So anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I've done videos like this before of this house in particular. It's easy for me. This is the workshop. This is the garage. Now you know, if you didn't know, it's not my house. This is not my garage. I just use it. And I've shown this before in shorter videos without as much detail. And I think that the watch videos helped me with the ability to talk about and point out the finer details of the pieces in the house. Because when you're talking about a watch, this is the Seiko Atlas Landshark on a leather, now Zulu strap, no longer a NATO strap. I'll get into that on another video. But when you're looking at the watches and you're talking about all those fine details, like the indices on the dial and the hands and the movement of the crown and all this stuff, boom, you know, these are the things I've always been into and noticed. That's what I do for a living, is the details. But I haven't been as good about talking about the details when I'm showing you the piece. In the past, my thought process always was, you can see it. This is a visual medium. I don't need to point this out to you. But I've discovered that it does help to point those things out to you. Because even if you are looking at it, you go, wow, it's beautiful. But if you hear me explain, well, these are book-matched pieces, and these are compound curves, and look at the taper here, and look at the contrast there, it reinforces that, oh, there's something a little extra special here. So that's all that's about. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks again for being here. And now you know I'm not a bum, right? Be good to one another. Have a great day.